I would like to introduce Lindsey. She's got her title there beside her. She is the Holocaust Education Trust Ambassador. As an ambassador, that's what one of the things that she's to do is to try and spread the word to as many different people as possible. So, let her tell you a wee bit about herself. I'm sure she will explain who she is and how she got into this role and a wee bit about what her role is. Okay, so I'll hand over to Lindsey.
So, hi, as I've been introduced, my name is Lindsey Haggart and I'm currently one of the Holocaust Educational Ambassadors for Scotland. I've been doing a few presentations around Scotland in the last few months called The Holocaust, People, Places and Why They Matter in the 21st Century. So in recent events this week, this one's had a little bit of an update, but it's essentially the same as I have been trying to take round older years of schools, clubs like yourselves, community groups. I've been in speaking in workplaces to staff to kind of share the word as to why Holocaust education is so important in the 21st century. So to start off with a little bit about me, as I've already said, I'm the Scottish Regional Education Ambassador. As well as this, I'm a full-time law student and I focus on international disputes, which ties in quite nicely as a modern connection to the Holocaust. My work with HET all started when I was still at high school and they run a programme called Lessons from Auschwitz. It is a year-long programme which introduces 5th and 6th year students into Holocaust education through taking them on a one-day visit to Poland, where you will visit Auschwitz, Auschwitz-Birkenau, Auschwitz, which is the village of Auschwitz originally, and speak with a Holocaust survivor and meet experts, historians and academics that all relate to the subject of the Holocaust. Once you return from this, you are required to do a presentation, which then, if you do well at this, HET asks you to stay on. And then as I've left school, I've been asked to be one of the regional ambassadors, which is how I've ended up here. I've got a passion for history and I love to share the truth about the past, the present and our near future history that people often forget about. So I would want to begin with a number. 6 million. That is the number that represents the estimated Jewish men, women and children murdered by the Nazi Party and their collaborators during the Holocaust. But numbers, while they're important, can never capture the full scope of what happened. The Holocaust wasn't just a statistic. It's a human story, a tragedy made up of people, shaped by places and driven by choices, individual and collective. And most importantly, it's not ancient history, it's part of our present. Today I want to talk about 3 main areas. The people whose lives were impacted or erased by the Holocaust, the places where these events unfolded, and most importantly to me, why remembering all of this matters so deeply in the 21st century. I want to start by talking about the people. Firstly, the victims. Victims of the Holocaust weren't just victims. They were teachers, tailors, mothers, artists, rabbis, students, and neighbours. They were people like Anne Frank, whose diary you might have read. But for every Anne, there were millions of others whose names we will never know. People like Janine Weber's family, who's pictured here, giving her testimony to regional, school and county ambassadors in 2023. Janine was born in 1932 in Lviv, Poland, a city now known as Lviv, Ukraine. When she was just 7, Lviv was occupied by the Soviet Red Army, following the Nazi-Soviet Pact. In 1941, the Nazis invaded and the persecution of Jews began, almost immediately. Within weeks, thousands were murdered by Nazis and their local collaborators. Janine and her family were forced to leave their home with just one suitcase, relocating to a cramped house shared with several other families on the edge of the city, a precursor to the Lviv ghetto. To protect themselves from Nazi raids, Janine's parents dug a hiding space under a wardrobe. It was only large enough for Janine, her brother, and their mother. Her father was shot, and she never saw her grandmother again. After entering the ghetto, Janine's mother died of typhus at age 29. As relatives fell victim to disease and others were deported to Belzec extermination camp, an uncle arranged for Janine and her Aunt Rucha to hide with a Polish farmer. But the farmer killed Rucha and Janine was eventually locked up, then forced to leave. Another farming family agreed to hide Janine and her brother Junior, but after a few months, their daughter betrayed them to an SS officer. Janine escaped, but Juno was shot. Alone, Janine worked briefly as a shepherdess until her identity as a Jew was discovered. The family she lived with then feared the consequences and gave her a train ticket back to Lviv. Before being separated, her Aunt Rucha had given her the name of a trusted Polish man named Edek, the caretaker of a convent. Janine found him, and he hid her in an attic, where she was reunited with Rucha and others in hiding. As danger increased, they were moved to a cramped underground bunker, where they lived for almost a year. To improve her chances of survival, Rucha arranged for false identity papers, and Janine took on the persona of a Polish Catholic girl. She was sent to a convent in Krakow, and later lived with a priest and then an elderly couple, working as a maid until the liberation of Krakow in 1945. After the war, Rucha returned and placed Janine in a children's home. Fearing post-war anti-Semitism, they left for Paris and eventually settled in the UK. In 1956, Janine arrived in London, where she met her now husband, raised a family, and still lives there today. Janine continues to share her story with schools, ensuring the memory of the Holocaust and its victims is never forgotten. It is important to focus that the victims of the Nazis were not only Jews, although they were the primary victims. The Nazis also persecuted Roma and Sinti people, often known as gypsies, disabled individuals under their so-called euthanasia programs, people of the LGBT community, Poles and other Slavic peoples, political dissidents, especially communists and trade unionists, and Jehovah's Witnesses who refused to swear allegiance to Hitler. The Holocaust was, at its core, an ideology of hate taken to its most brutal. The survivors. There were also survivors, and their voices are essential. People who managed to escape the horrors and were resilient enough to live through them and come out the other side, although far from unscathed. Elie Wiesel, a Holocaust survivor and Nobel laureate, once said, "For the dead and living, we must bear witness." People like Elie devoted their lives to telling the world what had happened, and yet many survivors never spoke about their experiences because of trauma, fear, or the feeling that people just wouldn't understand. For these people, it is essential that people like me share their stories and pass them on to the generations to come. Perpetrators and bystanders. We must also remember the ordinary people that were involved. It was not just Hitler and his top Nazi leaders. The genocide required bureaucrats, police officers, train drivers, and doctors. Many people were bystanders and often profited from the loss of others. But there were also upstanders, people who resisted, sheltered Jews, or fought against the Nazis. People like Oskar Schindler or Irina Sendler, a Polish social worker who rescued upwards of 2,500 children from the Warsaw Ghetto. History is not just written by generals and leaders, it's shaped by human choices, and that's one reason it matters so much today. The places. Pictured here is the "Work will set you free" sign from the gates of Auschwitz I. In cities across Europe, Jews were forcibly relocated into ghettos, overcrowded, walled-off areas where starvation and disease were rampant. The largest was the Warsaw Ghetto in Poland, where over 400,000 people were crammed into just 1.3 square miles. Despite the horrors, people in ghettos tried to maintain their culture and their dignity. They held secret schools for their children, wrote newspapers, composed music, and staged theatre. Resistance showed in many forms. Then came the camps. There were concentration camps like Dachau and Buchenwald, originally built to imprison political enemies. And then there were the extermination camps, designed purely for murder. The most infamous was Auschwitz-Birkenau, where over 1.1 million people were killed, most of them being Jews. Others include Treblinka, Sobibor, Belzec, names that remain burned into history. The Nazis built an institutionalised system of murder. Victims arrived by train, families were separated, most sent straight to gas chambers. This was not spontaneous, it was systematic. Places of memory. Today, many of these sites remain. They are no longer places of horror, they are places of memory and education. Walking through Auschwitz today, you'll see piles of shoes, hair, suitcases with names still on them. These are not just artefacts, they are echoes of people who lived, had hopes, and were destroyed. Visiting these places is hard, but it is necessary. They force us to confront the consequences of hate and the fragility of civilization. The next section of my talk features some places of memory that I have visited in the last 2 or 3 years myself, and a little bit of information about them, as I feel it really highlights to understand why these places exist and what they stand for. The House of the Wannsee Conference, located in Berlin, is where the site where senior Nazi officials met on January 20th, 1942 to coordinate the so-called final solution, the planned genocides of Europe's Jewish population. The meeting was led by Reinhard Heydrich and marked a turning point in organising the Holocaust. Originally built as a private villa in 1914, the house was taken over by the SS in 1941. For many years after the war, its dark history was not publicly acknowledged, and it wasn't until 1992, on the 50th anniversary of the conference, that the site officially became a memorial and educational centre. Today, the house is a museum and research site. It features a permanent exhibition on the Holocaust, carries out educational programmes, and features the preserved room where the conference took place. The memorial serves as a powerful reminder of how bureaucracy and ordinary officials played a role in one of history's greatest crimes, and why remembering it is so important. This is the memorial to the murdered Jews of Europe. This is Germany's central Holocaust memorial, and was decided by the Bundestag in 1999 and designed by Peter Einsmann, and officially opened in May 2005. Near Berlin Brandenburg Gate. It features a field of 2,711 concrete slates of varying heights, creating an abstract wave-like form, intended to inspire reflection upon the Holocaust and its victims. It also features an underground place of information, or a mini-museum, which provides details on the persecution of Jewish people during the Nazi era. While it is not intended to look like this, when I first witnessed it, it looked to me as if a graveyard for the unnamed Jews of Europe who were murdered by the Nazi Party. Also in Berlin features the Jewish Museum. Their Holocaust exhibit focuses on the systematic persecution of Jews in Nazi Germany. Through its new permanent exhibition, Jewish Life in Germany, which covers the Nazi period from 1933 to 1945, and the architect Daniel Liebeskind, which uses the void to symbolise the absence and loss of community. The exhibition features special works such as Breda Frita's secret drawings of the Thernstad ghetto. Gleis 17. This is at Berlin's Grunewald station. It commemorates the deportation of 50,000 Jewish citizens from Berlin between 1941 and 1945. From this very platform, trains operated by the German Reichsbahn transported victims to ghettos and extermination camps such as Auschwitz, Birkenau and Riga. The memorial consists of 186 steel cast plates embedded along the former train tracks. Each one marks a transport with the date, destination, and number of deportees. The tracks are deliberately left overgrown to symbolise that no train will ever depart from this platform again. A sculpture at the entrance depicts hollow human figures, evoking the suffering of those forced onto these trains. Inaugurated on January 27, 1998, Holocaust Remembrance Day, Gleis 17 stands as a stark and moving tribute to the victims, using the authenticity of the original site to convey the scale and horror of the Holocaust. My personal favourite memorial, which I think has the biggest impact once you learn what it's about, is the Stumbling Stones, or Stoppelstein. These are small brass memorial plaques placed in pavements across Europe. They honour victims of the Holocaust. Created by German artist Gunter Demnig in 1992. Each stone marks the last chosen residence of a victim and is engraved with their name, birth year, deportation date, and their fate. These are 10 by 10 centimetre stones that aim to make people stumble emotionally. They prompt reflection in everyday spaces. With over 100,000 stones in more than 30 countries across the world, it is the largest decentralised Holocaust memorial in the world. The project brings remembrance into everyday life, turning streets into places of quiet memory and personal connection to history. You might ask, why are we still talking about the Holocaust today? And why are people like myself so passionate about sharing the stories? After all, it's been 80 years, survivors are passing away. Isn't it all just part of history now? But here's the truth. The Holocaust is not just history, it is a warning for the future. Anti-Semitism didn't end with the fall of the Nazis. In recent years, we've seen a rise in Holocaust denial online, synagogue shootings in places like Pittsburgh, Poway, and more recently in Manchester, Jewish cemeteries vandalised, conspiracy theories targeting Jews, especially in times of crisis. The same ideologies that fed the Holocaust, hatred, dehumanisation, conspiracy, are all still alive. And not just anti-Semitism, racism, xenophobia, Islamophobia, homophobia, these forms of hate all share common roots. In 1945, the world said, never again. But genocide is happening again in Rwanda, in Bosnia, in Darfur, and currently in Gaza. Never again is not a guarantee, it's a call to action for the world. The Holocaust teaches us what happened when people are scapegoated, when fear overrides empathy, when lies go unchecked, when silence becomes complicity. It also shows us the power of resistance, the resilience of the human spirit, and the moral imperative to speak out even when it's difficult. What can we do as a society? Learn, keep educating yourself, listen to survivors, read testimonies, and where you can, visit museums and memorials. Speak up when you see hate, whether online or in person. Say something. Small acts of courage matter. Connect. Build relationships across differences. Empathy is the enemy of hate. And remember, not just once a year on Holocaust Memorial Day or when someone like myself comes to speak to you, but as part of how we understand the world every day. I would like to add in a short note on current affairs. It is important to us at HET that we recognise that the criticism of the Israeli government does not equate to anti-Semitism, and many Jewish individuals and communities around the world openly oppose the policies of the Israeli state, especially regarding the treatment of Palestinians. Numerous Jewish groups, including the Jewish Voice for Peace and If Not Now, have spoken out strongly against the occupation, military aggression, and human rights violations in Gaza and the West Bank. These groups emphasise values of justice, equality, and solidarity, and many Jewish voices have expressed deep grief and outrage for the suffering of Palestinians. For them, standing with Gaza and advocating for Palestinian freedom is a moral responsibility, rooted in Jewish ethical traditions and commitment to human dignity for all. Let me end with the words of Holocaust survivor and author Primo Levi. It happened, therefore it can happen again. This is at the core of what we have to say. People, places, memory and responsibility. The Holocaust is not just a story of the past, it's a mirror held to the present and the choices we make, how we speak, who we stand with and what we allow. Those choices shape the kind of world we live in. Thank you. I would like to add that if there's any questions at all, feel free to ask and I will answer to the best of my abilities.
Thanks very much, Lindsay. That was excellent. And anybody, any questions or comments for Lindsay?
I thought that was an excellent presentation, by the way, Lynn, and
Thank you.
very good.
Oh.
Glad that I didn't miss it. Yeah.
No, don't worry. We'll be sending out the actual presentation itself on various ways. So that's it. Lindsay, can I just congratulate you? I think a lot of us adults say it's great that the younger generation are still doing what you're doing. You must never forget. I take it that you actually been out there yourself?
Yes, so I have been to, let me think now. I have been to Krakow twice, and more recently I went to, I've not actually put it in here, I was trying to think of a way to fit it in. I went to Berlin, obviously, because I have the memorials of the murdered Jews of Europe, etc., and the Wannsee conference, but there was also a really moving part of that for me, which I did this works out in around, I did another sort of similar thing to this around International Women's Day, and I went to the specific Ravensbrück, which was the women and children's camp in just outside Berlin, and that would be my fourth camp I've been to, and I was planning on going to Yad Vashem in Jerusalem, but obviously that is not currently possible. But hopefully in very recent years coming, hopefully I'll be able to get out to Israel and go to Yad Vashem, which is the World Holocaust Library and the memorial out to the Holocaust in Jerusalem.
Has all this influenced your decision for a career in international law?
I would say so, yeah. Well, before I started all this, I wanted to be a vet, and here we are. So it's definitely moved me somewhere.
No, I did wonder, because I thought at the start that, yeah, because it gives you a much wider aspect of the world, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yep, she comes from a family where the vet would have been the choice of. So you've definitely changed that right round 180 or 360 degrees, I think, there.
Aye.
Anybody else, any comments or questions?
I'm on another one. Where do you see your next step in law going? What's your procedures?
Get through exam season.
Yeah.
After that, so I'm currently doing a focus on private international law just now, and focusing on cross-border conflicts. So looking at international abductions and cross-border adoption cases and along that sort of lines, which is going to bring me into hopefully talking about children on the Gaza Strip and family relocation for out there.
Yeah. Looks as though you might be coming back as a speaker before too long.
Maybe.
A regular date booked. Anybody else, anything they want to ask her? Say? No, I think your presentation really kind of said it all. There wasn't much that we probably could ask. I think it was such a powerful presentation, and I think what you say is right, that the people now who were involved are all beginning to pass away, and it's really important that somebody's taken on the mantle of keeping this in the forefront of people's minds. And we'd just like to thank you for that presentation and for coming along tonight, and we just thank you in the usual way with a round of applause, which you can't hear, which is a shame on Zoom, isn't it? Can I get silent applause?